Have you signed from the library? Is it not working? Hello, hello. Oh, is it working? Oh. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Can you guys hear me in the back?
It was working a minute ago, but it's not.
What do you think of that?
Is this one working better? Would you rather use this one? Is that better? Here we go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. You know us, we like to start on time, right? So welcome to LT Senior Services webinar and seminar on brain health. We are so happy that you're all here today. We're supposed to have about 30 people in the room, and we have 50 people online. So we're still doing our webinars online because so many people still can't get out, but we also have people all around the nation. We have people from San Diego, Las Vegas. That's pretty cool. So it's worked out interesting during COVID. Also, just to let you know, this will be recorded and there will be a YouTube of it. So if you find the information valuable and you would like to share it with somebody else, we are fancy Lake Travis Senior Alliances. We have our own YouTube channel. So you can go there and you can actually see all of our webinars. So if there's some other topics, if you go there, you can read about it.
And the title is?
The title will be today's date. And what is our title for today?
Texas Healthy Brain Initiative.
Texas Healthy Brain Initiative. It's a mouthful, and I'm so glad you guys are all here today. So my name is Cindy Cummings. I am one of the founders of LT Senior Services, and we provide services for older adults in the Lake Travis area. We're very specific to the Lake Travis area. And what we try to do is provide informational events such as this. We also are going adding some social events. We did the tree lighting in December and we had so much fun. We all came as a group and met at the activity center. Our next event is going to be going on the Heritage Tour. Has anybody gone on the Heritage Bus Tour before? Okay, well, I've got 18 tickets. And so we're going to be sending out an invite and we're going to meet ahead of time at the activity center. And then we're going to go on the tour. I've always wanted to do it, lived here 21 years and never did it. So it's my turn. I'm excited. And we have some other social ideas that we're getting on the books. So we're super excited about that. So LT Senior Services is a 501c3. So we are a nonprofit. We have members and we have several members who are here today. And we just want to have them come up to the front and introduce themselves. They are for-profits and nonprofits. And they help to make everything run real smoothly. So all of the members of LT Senior Services that you'll come up front up with, we'll let you do a quick little intro. Don't be shy. Come on. I want to get you in the camera so people can actually see your face. So come over by me. Because I think I'm in the camera. Is that right? See the owl? Look at see the eyes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sahiba Basi. I'm a professional organizer and I own Declutter Bee. I help people like you, like everyone else, organize their homes, declutter their homes. A lot of times we have a lot of things that we hold on to or have, and clutter directly leads to all the scientifically proven. So I help you figure things out. I don't force people to let go of things, but I find solutions to figure out how to keep those things and find homes for everything in your house. Because all these things can also cause a lot of issues with respect to just mobility. And so I help everybody with that. I also help people create systems. Anybody who wants to work with me is most welcome. I look forward to hearing from you. On your way out, you'll see on that table, we have some brochures to read about more, to know more about me and my services. So, and I am here to talk to all of you.
Excellent. Thank you. So bring those brochures up here. So we're going to put all the brochures up at this front table. So we have somebody else who wants to be introduced, and this is our wonderful partner. And Morgan, take it away.
Hello, everybody. My name is Morgan McMillan, the director of the Lake Travis Community Library here. I can tell you about a bazillion things, but I'm going to only tell you about 3 things. Number 1, we have a home delivery service If you have a need or you have a friend or a neighbor who can't get out due to a medical condition, talk to us. We'll deliver them movies and large print books and magazines once a month at their home. Please help us spread the word. It's hard to. They're not gonna read about it in the library, so I'm giving y'all homework. Number two, we have tech help at the library. I don't know about you, but things change all the time. I need help. Monday through Thursday, 12 until 2, drop by and get one-on-one tech help from a volunteer coach. We also have classes on Zoom every Wednesday morning at 10:30. So think of us when you need tech help. The third thing I want to tell you about is relatively new at the library. On Tuesdays, every Tuesday at 1 o'clock, we have an exercise class here in this room. It's Power for Parkinson's, so it's specifically for people with Parkinson's and their caregivers, but I can tell you, I hop in every week and it's just a great exercise class. You can do it seated. You can make it as hard or as easy as you want to. A lot of good things for balance. So it is free every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. They just joined us again back in February. They were here years ago. They're just back, so it's not a big class yet. Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. Come ask me if you want to know more about the library. Thank you very much.
So we have another member here.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Whitney Myers, and I am a personal historian specializing in video biographies. My business is Sacred Stories. My website is sacredstoriesfilms.com. I'm the first person listed in your brochure, and I have some brochures up here. I'll be the speaker in May here at the library on collecting family stories. Families hire us to interview themselves or their loved one, and we make a mini movie featuring the stories of their life.
Awesome.
Don't we just have some, they're doing just wonderful things. So fun. We have one more. This is Laura Dutton. She's a longtime friend of mine, and she recently has moved and is working at as a marketing director at Longleaf. And we're so excited to have her back in the Lake area. So here's Laura.
So Longleaf is, it's been open almost a year, memory care and assisted living. We are next door to the, I think everyone knows where it is, the discount tire. It sounds so not glamorous, but Longleaf has been open almost a year. And the thing I think that sets it apart is I'm really fond of people with dementia, and memory care can only take 29 people. The assisted living can take 60, but our pricing is all inclusive. So everything is included in the price, all the care, which I think helps people with the budgeting right now. And then I wanted, if you would like, you can take a bag, and in that bag we're promoting National Sleep Day, which is it's the 28th. So I put some sleepy time tea bags and some information on how it works. And this is inappropriate, but it looks like you guys can roll with it. They are saying that good sleep is the new sex. It's more important than people than sex, because we need to know this. So I'll end on that note. More
This is recorded. That's so appropriate for Laura Dutton. I wanted to let you know about next month's seminar. It's going to be Baylor Scott and White. Their Lakeway doctor is going to be talking about skin. Right? I'm looking at that.
Skin health.
Skin health, yes. So please come back for that. We're really excited to partner with Baylor and White and for their doctors to join us. We also are going to.
Do you have a date?
The date is on 3/21. And then we have a shred day coming up. It's March 28th, and it is free. We ask for donations. It's one of our fundraisers. We're over by Lakeway Aquatic Physical Therapy in their parking lot, so it's pretty easy to find. If you load stuff in your trunk, we'll unload it for you. We've had businesses bring all of their papers. We had one company who brought them all, and they gave us some really nice information, so we'll take it. So I hope that you'll join us for Shred Day. I guess I should say who I am. Does anybody know who I am? My name, but I am a local realtor, and I helped to found LT Senior Services with a lot of other really smart people. We thought this would be a great group, and we've been going strong now for several years, and we're just so happy to be a part of it. But I am a local realtor, and I help with moving and downsizing. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker. So Debbie Hanna, she's with Alzheimer's Texas. And she's the principal of MDS2, a nonprofit consulting organization serving charities in the state of Texas. Since 2002, Debbie has been involved in funding and general support for projects related to Alzheimer's disease and other neurological disorders. She serves as organizing president of the Gerald A. Royal Research Fund for Alzheimer's disease, which has distributed over $6 million in private neurological research grants to Texas medical schools and universities. Appointed by Governor Rick Perry and continued by Governor Greg Abbott, she recently completed service of 13 years as chair of Texas Council on Alzheimer's disease and related disorders, supervising the Texas Alzheimer's Research Care Consortium. Through her position on the Texas Council, she led the effort to secure and distribute over $70 million in research funds to the medical schools. A whole group of medical schools. I'm not going to read them all. There are a whole bunch, basically all of them. An active volunteer, Debbie holds and has held many positions on a variety of local and state boards, commissions, and committees, among them the Texas Permanent School Fund Investment Advisory Committee, University of Houston System Board of Regents, Committee of Governing Boards, Texas A&M Real Estate Research Center. Debbie is married to Austin attorney Mark Hanna, and they have one son, an attorney active in energy trading in Houston. So we are beyond thrilled to have Debbie here today to speak to us at our local library. We're just so happy that you're here today, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about the initiative.
I will, yes, I will. All right, I am somewhat, let's wait this guy out here. There we go. Let's see, now here, it's a relatively new iPad. Morgan is the, Morgan, where are you? Raise your hand. Okay.
Right in the center.
All right, I'm making. Thank you. It's really great to be here. I'm really impressed by what Cindy and doing. I'm impressed by Morgan's library. I've lived in Austin for 44 years. I live very close to university. I rarely make it out here to Lakeway, so you can imagine what my morning was like, coming up pack and then actually making my way to 620. This is an explosion of people and buildings and houses and trucks and traffic and stoplights and, like all of us in this room, I have memories of Lakeway when I first came here and when Austin was a magical town. And wow, has it changed, and so this is kind of a lead in to talking about a healthy brain, because change is good for the soul, I believe it is, and change is good for the brain. And so it's coming down the road whether we want it to or not. And so the best thing that we can do is, what the kids say now, power through, happy counts for everything, roll with the punches. I wish I could tell you this morning that I'm going to give you all sorts of magic answers and plans and programs for maintaining a healthy brain, or preventing Alzheimer's, ALS, Huntington's, Parkinson's, Lewy bodies, common dementia, any of the diseases. I can't, but I can tell you that there are many things going on that provide information and support, and in the area of research, hope for the future. I started out as a board member several years ago for Alzheimer's Texas. We were at one time part of Alzheimer's Association, which many of you have heard of. It's a large, kind of a big American Cancer, American Heart organization based out of Chicago. And there were some changes, organizational changes, and in about 2015, Alzheimer's Texas became a Texas-only organization. What's raised here stays here. We help people here. We're totally friendly with the Alzheimer's outfit in Chicago, and they do a wonderful job. But our board and our contributors were focused on Texas, and then very specific in general areas across the state. So the website that I have up for you right now is the Alzheimer's Texas website. I don't know what kind of sleep pattern I've got on this thing. But the website is, for those of you that are taking notes, TXALZ as in zebra.org. Now, if you have Alzheimer's in your family, if you are concerned about services and support, if you want education, if you want information, this is a great spot on which to land. You'll see the top nav bar, the top section, we have a caregiver conversation, and one is scheduled actually for today at 1 o'clock. Several, I'd say about 2 or 3 years ago, our board, I'm a financial consultant for Alzheimer's Texas and help them with programs and raising money. We decided that with all of the rich resources we have in Austin, Texas, medically, university research, et cetera, that we would no longer use volunteers. I've been myself forever, and I understand the value of volunteerism. We don't use volunteers for any of our services. The individual who leads our caregiver conversations monthly is a professor at the Hicks College of Social Work at the University of Texas at Austin, Dr. Joan Alsett. She is a licensed clinical social worker, and so much is changing in the area of care and support and information that Alzheimer's Texas now goes outside, and we contract with a number of LCSWs, a number of PhDs, a number of professors at the University of Texas to help us with every program we author and every program that we give. So today, I'm not sure what her conversation is today, but I'm gonna scroll down and show you on this section. You see all about ALZ. These are, if you all go to this website, the reason we've gone to web driven rather than face to face. These are on our website. They're also on YouTube, and they're available to you 24 hours a day. So Dr. Asef has put these on. You can go to our website. You want to, whatever, advanced care planning. I just watched Coping with Anticipatory Grief the other night. I had a friend that was having a really tough time with some things, and so I wanted to make sure I was skilled and ready to help her as best I could. So I recommend that you head to this website to learn an incredible amount of information. Dr. Asef is very well spoken. Her presentations are at an academic level, rooted in science, rooted in clinical expertise, but she's very relatable. What are the good ones? These are all good, but benefits of exercise for people living with dementia, practicing mindfulness, strategies for dementia caregivers, deciding when it's time for hospice or palliative care. And we pop up whatever she talks about today will be transferred by Monday of this coming week onto this inventory of slides. And so for those of you who want to learn something and learn from a person that you're otherwise not going to be exposed to, you're learning from a person who is a graduate college advisor to master's and PhD level candidates at the University of Texas at Austin. So we're very, very pleased that Dr. Asef can help us, and she does so on a regular basis. We are also Alzheimer's Texas is also a 501c3. Should we invite him in?
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
I was just wondering if that man was looking.
Sure. Yeah, they're welcome. Pop in.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get your attention.
The other thing that is important to remember, if it's let's see, on the home screen, I'll just read y'all this phone number. Got a pen. 512-241-0420. 1-2-241-0420. It's also on this website, but I'm not sure how doing quality is on this, so I'll just repeat the things that I think are most important. This is a 24/7, 365 days a year live answered helpline. If 911, you're going to be sent somewhere else. The person who runs it right now is a young lady who just got her master's degree under Dr. Asef's supervision at UT with high honors in health and social work, and she has a 4-month-old baby. So she will get back to you really quickly and suggest an appointment time for a helpline call. And she will answer as many of your questions as she can. She will help direct you. She will help guide you in whatever path you're on. Whether you're a caregiver, whether you're a person with a disease, whether you are an adult child, whether you have problems with your sister who doesn't believe you're taking good enough care of your mother, and that's the only why she doesn't know what day of the week it is, you know. I've been through that. If you just get mother out of bed and make her exercise and feed her better, you know, you wouldn't have these problems. So this young woman's name is Austin McKee, and she is also, she just recently completed her master's degree in social work, live communication support from a credentialed licensed professional at no charge to you, no charge ever. One of the reasons when Alzheimer's Texas left Alzheimer's Association, our board is still full of business people. ABC Pest Control, Bobby Jenkins, we have a King Ranch family member, we have a bank president, we have a couple of neurologists, and the national office wanted us to charge for services. And the two of the ladies on our board said, well, why would we volunteer our time and give you money if you're going to charge people for everything you do? And we said, well, that makes sense. So we decided to break amicably from them, but at no time do we ever for any service that we provide. And we don't have any limits on services. You know, Austin will easily take 2-3 phone calls a month from one person until she feels like they've made their way through. So this is Alzheimer's Texas. Now, what we do at Alzheimer's Texas, what the staff and the social workers do is all rooted in care and support. But we also act as a volunteer organization, volunteer advocates for 2 organizations. The first of which is the Darrell Royal Fund. Sinking, okay. This organization was founded in 2012 when it became public knowledge, or it had been public for some time before that, but widespread public knowledge that Coach Royal was suffering from Alzheimer's disease. And I had known him, but only as a retired gentleman. It really was Edith Royal's husband and the coach of the University of Texas football. And so we had provided through friends some support for Mrs. Royal and some information for her. And they lived at the Querencia, and Coach Royal at one time had to move out of the independent living and move into one of the different levels of living at Querencia. And some of the Royals' closer friends talk to Mrs. Royal all the time about letting Coach's name be used on a nonprofit, a C3, that would be used to raise research money for neurological disorder. Sorry. Oh, it's my phone ringing.
Yes.
I'm sorry, they gave me this for Christmas. And it's February, and I still don't know how to use it. So Coach Royal, of course, as you know, had an incredible reputation, a man of incredible wit, highly skilled, revered in his industry, and really a great sense of humor until the very end, a great sense of humor. So we were a little bit, because Alzheimer's Texas is rooted exclusively in support and care, we thought, okay, well, you know, we need some more research money, because that's research, you know, hoping to find a prevention, plateau, or cure for some of the neurological disorders, of which right now there's none. There's no prevention, there's no plateau drug, and there's a cure. And the brain is really the last frontier in medical research. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So we thought that several of us, we could raise some money in Coach's name and do some good with it, and we have. But Ms. Royal, speak to him about it first and get his permission. And we were, you know, sometimes Alzheimer's is that it's don't use. They just, you know, whisper the word. And we've all experienced it. Many of us have experienced it in our families. And my husband always laughs when we go to a party or a reception, or we're around people that we just know maybe a little. He'll say to me, don't talk about Alzheimer's, Debbie, please. Our people will say to me, or so say to me, is she still that Alzheimer's lady? You know, and so it's stigmatized, and we're all familiar with diseases, conditions, and situations that are stigmatized, so we were afraid. Pretty afraid is a good word, of how Coach Royal would react. This very proud man who's been in a man's world his entire life and revered, you know, presidents and movie stars and Willie and everybody, you know, on his guest list for everything. And so Mrs. Robin spoke to him and she said, well, Daryl, they want to get this thing going. They want to use your name. And so she explained it to him. And she said that they think they want to call it the Daryl Royal Research Fund for Alzheimer's. What do you think about that? And he said, well, it is what it is, even. It is what it is. So we started raising money and we sought the advice of brilliant research from all over the country. And our lead advisor serves as a volunteer is Dr. Ron Peterson at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. And Dr. Peterson is most recognized internationally for having been H.W. Bush's doctor from diagnosis to death, and Brett Reagan's doctor from diagnosis to death with Alzheimer's disease. And so we had big ideas, and so we thought, okay, we want to raise all these millions of dollars, which we did, and give me out to the big time researchers, you know, the big guys at UT Southwestern and Mayo Clinic. And so Dr. Peterson and another physician on his staff, both board certified neurologists. Most of these people in this world are MDs and PhDs, some sort of bioscience background, bioengineering, and a medical doctor. So they came to Austin and we had 6 or 8 people in the meeting and they said, we talked about our plans, a bunch of volunteers with DKR. DKR Fund has no paid employees. Everybody volunteers for DKR Fund. So we told them our plans and how we wanted to give out money to, you know, the big toppers. And they said, no. You need to give out grants that are $150,000, maybe $175,000 at the most. And you need to offer these grants on a competitive basis of projects that we'll select for you, meritorious grant requests to young researchers, people who are 10 years or less post-terminal degree. Most of them get an MD, PhD, MD, PhD in that order. And then some of them do an international fellowship. So, you know, sometimes they're 38, sometimes they're 40. So they go to work for these universities. Doesn't matter if it's University of Texas. It doesn't matter where they go to work. They are expected to go immediately from the lab, what I call ladies at lunch, raise money. Because in this very competitive world of academic research, these brilliant young people who have devoted so much of their lives to academic affairs and scholarly pursuits, all of a sudden they're out with people asking them for money for lunch because the universities and medical schools put a burden of self-funding in most instances on some of the most brilliant researchers in the world. So Dr. Peterson said, Coach Broyle spent his whole life working with young people, his whole life. 18 to 21 years old. By the time they were 20, they were gone out of his life. And he said, you know, everything he did successfully because he believed in young people and building them, coaching them up, as they say in the business. So they said, in honor of Coach Royal, we can do 2 things. We should give out these grants. That's a moderate amount of money, 175, 160,000. Give out these grants at moderate amounts to these young people and fund Texas. He lived in, other than the fact he was born in Hollis, Oklahoma, and all of his fabulous football records were at OU as a player. His football career was really here. So that's what DKR Fund has done. And it's probably not interesting, but something we have given out grants to it's working. Yeah, I'll just scroll, you know, these grants, the titles to them are irrelevant, like molecular prototyping and the role of novel AI F3 as in dementia, etc. But we have given out almost $7 million worth of grants. And the last grant, research grant in the area, this is all primarily Alzheimer's and Parkinson's work that you're seeing here. So we were down to about $1 million when COVID hit, and our last fundraiser was about 2 months before the COVID hit. We had a big party at the ACL downtown. We had the Doobie Brothers come in and perform. It was a wild event, a lot of fun, big auction. But we shut down the big time fundraising, a lot of, 2,500 people type event when the COVID hit. And so we said, well, what would we do with the money if we were never going to raise another dollar? And what would most honor the way Coach lived his life and what he and Edith did? So we took proposals from several medical schools, and we funded a grant called CLEAATS at at the medical school in Southwestern in Dallas. And we are only, in Daryl's name, we are the only robust and rigorous medical study of college athletes, male and female, who participated in collision or contact sports for at least one semester in Division I. After the age of 50, they have to be 50 or older, and they're brought back in for a life screening, and they're evaluated for their health and well-being. And this is important to not just the athletes themselves, because their careers are over and their path for the most part on brain health is already set out in front of them. This is important for grandparents and parents and young athletes themselves who are afraid to let their 16-year-old play football for or they're afraid for their daughter to play soccer at Trinity because they think she's going to bump her head. Girls have, and I've learned so much about the neurological impact on women when collision sports like soccer, bicycling, terrible accidents happen in bicycling. So that's a whole different path of neurological research. It's the first time ever in Coach Roll's name that we did a significant funding on something that was really directly related to Coach Roll's life. Other than that, everything else you see has been really towards the benefit of us and our grandchildren, our children, and hopefully will produce some positive results sometime. You probably know $6 or $7 million worth of academic research. However proud what we are, budget dust in the world of academic funding. This UT Southwestern Medical School in Dallas, the O'Donnell Brain Institute, where we're funding right now. Mr. Peter O'Donnell and his wife Edith gave Southwestern $34 million to start the O'Donnell Brain Institute. Mr. Glenn Biggs, who was a oil and gas Valero executive in San Antonio who passed away, his estate and the Valero shareholders gave UT Health Science Center in San Antonio $48 million in Mr. Biggs' name to create a neurological research center in his name. I'm not just name dropping or throwing out numbers to impress you, but to help you understand that people are getting very, very serious about neurological disorders, as serious as they have been in the past about cancer and other maladies that have just devastated people's lives. We have this cohort of baby boomers right now, which I guess most of us are baby boomers in here. So the cohort, the population in front of the baby boomers is about 28 million people. The baby boomers are between 75 and 77 million people. And immediately behind the boomers, we're back down to about 28. So there is this major, overwhelming number of people who are going to demand services and support and organization and housing and medical health, et cetera, and hopefully healthy living so that you don't necessarily need any of the problems that come along with age. And so I think more than anything else, it is the size of the cohort bubbling through the American population that is bringing about all this attention to funding and to the importance of research. And when my grandmother was ill, they called it hardening of the arteries and just figured it was okay. Alzheimer's, as you probably know, is a form of dementia. It is the most common form of dementia. It is not the only form of dementia. So it is, by far and away, has the greatest corpus of people that have been diagnosed with the disease. If, I think we're gonna go back into the business of fundraising in end of 23 for Coach Royal's, funds. Miss Royal still lives at Grayson. She, turned 97 in October. All right, so now I'm gonna talk about, since I've been talking about money, Okay, the Texas Alzheimer's Research Organization. This organization and the Darrell Rural Organization are really, there are commentaries on the power of volunteers. And that's me.
Your essence this time.
Something's ringing. In 1992, way back when, the Texas legislature created an organization, an advisory organization called the Texas Alzheimer's Research Consortium. Like so many state initiatives, it was an unfunded mandate. It was just a feel good. They created this council. They attached it to the Department of Health, which is now the Department of Health and Human Services, or DISHES, as they call it in the state. And they invited 4 medical schools to be members of this group. And I don't know which, I don't remember which 4, Texas Tech and UT Southwestern, but 4 medical schools. They invited them to be part of the group. They didn't give them any money. That's the most important thing, which is very common in the state of Texas. Government everywhere, you know, they always pass something and it impresses people. They don't fund it, and then everybody goes on down the road. So the Alzheimer's Texas organization, we had a couple of people on our board, actually a lobbyist who's also riddled with Alzheimer's in his family. Your lobbyist from Tyler, who lives and works here in Austin. And so he was knocking around, I guess, the books one day. He said, you know, I came across this state consortium, and it doesn't have any money, and it's only got 4 members, and one's private, Baylor College of Medicine. So let's start looking around and see what we can do about getting some money. So we reached out to our volunteer corps. The Alzheimer's Texas, by the way, their database of donors and people over the years that have helped and participated in sports events like a walk. There are 40,000 contacts in the CRM, the client data that Alzheimer's Texas. So we reached out to this major database to pick up people who have an interest in volunteering for advocacy at the state capitol. So that was 2005. So this outfit council had been in existence since 1992 without a penny. So just through this very serendipitous turn of events, we discovered that Lieutenant Governor David Dewhurst at the time was, we found out on the day of his inauguration that his mother was in a facility in Houston with vascular dementia. Another, you know, like Alzheimer's type. So we contacted him, and he helped us get $2 million. And you talk about real budget dust, $2 million for 4 universities. You know, you can think about what we pay our football coach now. You know, like what, 5 million, 6 million, whatever. So that was not any money. It just sort of opened the door, but it whetted our appetite for the possibility of state funding of Alzheimer's research, neurological research, and what else lost me? I'll just talk loud. What else we could be doing with money? So that was the session of 95. So, you know, the legislature meets every 2 years, whether they need to or not, what we always say around here. And then I love all these people moving here from California and places, they're just shocked, you know, when you say, well, you know, the session's going on, so we can't do anything until June. So yeah, the session, my husband does legislative work, and the session will be over in June. Right now he's working 7 days a week. Why June? I said, well, because we meet 104 days every 2 years, whether we need to or not. That's it. So anyhow, we came out of that session with 2 million. And over time, it's an advisory council. So various people are appointed by Lieutenant Governor, Governor, and Speaker to the advisory council. And we ended up advocating with the great help of the University of Texas system and University of Texas at Austin. And when this session ends out, we will have we will have appropriated from the state of Texas over $70 million that is distributed on the basis of meritorious research proposals that are submitted and reviewed by an entire out-of-state panel, Chinese wall between the panel reviewers and the schools and their researchers for the integrity of the system. And the last of January, this group, this TARC group, Texas Alzheimer's Research and Care Consortium, had their annual presentations and symposium at the AT&T Hotel and Alumni Center. Over 385 young scientists from medical schools and undergraduate schools, engineering and communications and the related areas. 385, and probably not a one of them are 45 or 48 years old. Great enthusiasm. In 2005, we couldn't have gotten 10 in the room. When I say we're just volunteers pushing you for money. There's a director at UT Southwestern, makes the magic happen every day. But we have a great group of volunteer advocates who are very proud of what we're able to do for people. Now, I'm a layperson. The titles that are on that DKR fund of the research that's being done, I don't know what they're doing. I know that it's very tedious. I know it's a very long fuse. I know that that without money, it's not going to happen. And when I say money, I mean big money. It has to, we really have to up our game. I know that besides the research itself, that what money does is it brings more money. The young researchers who've taken some of this DKR money, or they have taken some of this TARP money, $70 million with now 10 institutions over 15 years. That's not a lot of money either, but it's a start, it's putting us on the map somewhere. So what happens is they expand on their research, they cooperate, they interact with their peers, and then they apply for other grants. And a $165,000 or $170,000 grant from DKR or from TARP can be parlayed into several $1 million at the NIH. And that's what we're looking for. Beyond that, to fund their labs and their research, the benefit is likes attract. And so we want to be in a position where the state of Texas and all of our medical schools and universities have a cadre of the most important research scientists and medical doctors in the world here in Texas. And that's the problem. We don't have that many. I can probably count on one hand the ones that if I were to say to somebody at a medical school in Chicago, oh, well, he's it. O'Donnell's Dallas, or she is at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, that their name would immediately be recognized. And younger scientists, like the good assistant football coaches, want to work with a big coach. The young, it's how the system works. So besides this money being beneficial, actually the hard science is going on in a lab with a team. It also says to other emerging scientists, Texas is where you want to be. We've got to do something to get them here because it's 108 in August. And everybody who comes here from UCSF or UC Santa Barbara to interview for a job, we always say, don't bring them in August. Bring them in February or March, because they're just shocked by the weather here. But for the most part, they fall in love with the people. Texas is rich in a climate of its residents. So we continue to work and advocate for money because what they're doing in these labs is not necessarily important to you or me at my age in our lifespan. Body grows really slow, and especially slow when you're working in a neurological environment. what have I learned all of these years? What's good for your heart's good for your head. What your grandmother told you is probably true. Rest, sleep, exercise, moderation, activity, social activity. I just read a most interesting article yesterday, and I'll send it to Cindy, about the aging brain. There's a wonderful center at UT Dallas called the Center for Brain Health, and it's run by a delightful woman named Dr. Sandy Bond Chapman. UT Dallas Center for Brain Health. This is her brain week going on right now. She's got something going on interactively every day. Just Google UT Dallas or Sandy Chapman, it's with an I, S-A-N-D-I, Sandy Chapman, and you will learn a great deal of things from Dr. Chapman. But what I did learn over the years listening to her lecture is that multitasking is the devil. Our brains, it drags us down rabbit holes, it interferes with our cognitive process. And if you know, if you have a person in your family, I have two that are not multitaskers, and you are a multitasker, you probably drive them crazy because they don't identify with how you think and how you live and where you go. You know, my husband is not a multitasker. That doesn't mean you can't stop and start projects. It means that you have this capacity in your brain. When you get to what you consider to be the appropriate stopping point, you can stop. You can turn that machine off and move on to the next machine. And so I've heard Dr. Chapman give many lectures about multitasking. So y'all, when you're Googling around, Google Sandy Bond Chapman, Center for Brain Health, UT Dallas, and read about the evils of multitasking and little mental games you can play to discipline yourself on when you feel yourself, you know, going down the rabbit trail. And we all just ache for children and grandchildren who can't survive without a device in their hand. You know, they can't eat an enchilada at the local restaurant without something in front of them. And you think, you know, this can't end well. It can't, and I think we all know that. So that's a little apart about Von Chapman, but there was this great article about the most productive time in your brain life, and it's all about myelin and myelination. Do you know what myelination is? Myelination, if you know any boys, if you raise boys, you know what myelination is. Myelination is the activity that occurs in the frontal part of the brain, frontal lobe, and it's the last activity in brain development when you are transitioning from teenage, young adult to full adult. And it won't surprise you, parents, that girls myelinate at least 5 to 7 years before boys myelinate. And so what happens in the frontal lobe? Executive level thinking, which is called our good decisions. So that's why boys jump off buildings. And that's why boys, you know, drive cars at 100 miles an hour. Their brains, the myelination process has not finalized. And so that part of the frontal lobe is not covered. And so their executive level thinking is not intact. And in many instances, the myelination process was what prompted lawmakers when fashioning the criminal code to create the juvenile code so that juveniles were not treated or prosecuted in the same manner as adults, because they're not adults. They're not fully functioning adults physically. Now, we're in a very verified, sophisticated environment now. Young people are exposed to a lot more information. They have a lot more capacity to grow up and mature and make good decisions. But this myelination process is what has slowed the young boys down. And so, as I said, if you see them driving around, they're probably 19. If you raise a boy, you get what I'm talking about. Between my husband and I, we've raised 4 boys. So yes. So it's a strange and foreign land. I'm going to move to the Texas Healthy Brain Initiative. And I picked February because to present to y'all, because I expected to be able to come here and just dazzle you with what's going on at the Texas legislature. But things are a little behind back there. The ice storm. Let's see, I've got an email that the lady was sending me the link This is the really good news. See, here she is. Nikki. Okay. This website is not live yet. It's gonna be live tomorrow morning. And it's texashealthybrain.org. For the last, well, are any of you here familiar with CPRIT, CPRIT? Do you know what CPRIT is? Well, back in the days of Lance Armstrong riding his bicycle through the mountains, you know, his cancer story is a remarkable. Lance has a lot of stories, but the cancer story is the most remarkable of all. A man settled in Austin, Texas. I'm not sure if he finished high school or not. He was always a ultra athlete, triathlete, bicycle guy. Lived with a bunch of guys in Hyde Park. Worked out with athletes from the university. Became apparent to everybody that he was elite. You know, just from the get-go, he was different than the other athletes. So he was knocking around, advanced in the world of cycling. And through some sort of, I don't know if it was a physical for an event or something, but he ended up with testicular cancer at the age of, I don't know, 21 or 22. Tragic story. So he has to drop out of the season of cycling and bounces around all over medical places. And there's a little restaurant on Lake Austin Boulevard, right by this gigantic new HEB that opened last weekend. Unbelievable. Called Lottie's Mexican Food. And I was seated outside with a friend on their almost parking lot eating. And Lance was early 20s and had been off to the Cleveland Clinic. And he came back and he was just a shadow of his former self. And he had a Willie bandana on his head tied. And I noticed the wind kind of whipped up the back. And I saw his skull, shaved head. And I thought, my God, that young man, he doesn't have 60 days to live. Looked like an Indiana road map up here, just. So as fate would have it and everything else that occurred in his life, not only did he survive this incredible cancer that had spread throughout his body, but he, along with Senator Jay Nelson, who's now our Secretary of State, but at the time the Senator of Flower Mound, Texas, who was very interested in cancer and Alzheimer's because of everything. They, along with some venture capitalists from Austin, they created an organization, state organization called CPRIT, C-P-R-I-T, Cancer Research Organization funded by bonds, which took a constitutional amendment. They're able for 5 years at a time, and they're allowed to bond $5 billion. There are $15 billion this session, and they fund cancer research. It is a state agency that was created. It is unique to Texas, and it's one of the most important and impressive things that has ever happened in medical research. Fast forward maybe 8 or 10 years, and several of us that were at first knocking around trying to get that first $2 million from Governor Dewhurst for our little advisory council, and we got the DCR fund going, got 5 or 6 million for that. Then we kind of bump up the state appropriation for TARC, and now we're pushing 70 million for that. We have gone back to the legislature this session now the third time, trying to get the legislature to agree that the brain is as important as there is in medical research. And they keep talking about power. You know, those of us through Snowbed and the ice storm a couple of weeks ago, you know what life is without power. I told somebody yesterday, without brain power, you have no power. Okay, so forget about power. Let's talk about brain power. And we believe that this week, hopefully on Friday, the Brain Research Institute of Texas bill will be introduced in the House. And it's going to have a hard slog to work its way from the House to the Senate to the governor's desk. But the institute it's going to be called BRIT, just like CPRIT, and we're asking for $3 billion every 5 years. So this, go big or go home, I guess. This is, for some of us, this is our response. I think we don't get it this time. I told a friend from Dallas, we're just gonna lay on the beach, eat bonbons and listen to the radio. I mean, this is really the third time. We did get this bill out of the House last session and it died in the Senate. We made a few changes about brain health in Texas. The first and most important thing we did is that we've refocused our approach to across the entire lifespan. Most people associate brain health and brain disease with aging, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and what people usually say, when my mother was alive with Alzheimer's, I'd say, oh, mom has Alzheimer's. What's the first thing somebody says to you when you say, my mother, my godmother, my neighbor, my best friend has Alzheimer's? What's the first thing they say to you? How old is she? How old is she? I said, oh gosh, she's 78. Oh, well, that's too bad. Kind of like, okay, she lived a good life and, she's 78. I'm not. So, it makes it, it's that sort of ageism that's okay. Well, my age, it's not okay. It's not okay because it doesn't have to happen. Alzheimer's is not just a disease of age. There's a physiological event that occurs in the brain where proteins accumulate and tangles are an outcome, and the synapse is lost like a spark plug. And when that synapse is fouled with the tangles on the brain, that memory is gone and it's not coming back. And so that happens for old age. So we've taken a different approach in that the way this brain pattern and the secret is going to live is that we are gathering now for this Healthy Brain Initiative. Obviously, the diseases I've mentioned previously are going to be at the forefront. If for no other reason, the overwhelming number of people that are debilitated by these diseases and conditions, there's like almost 100,000 people in the state of Texas that have Alzheimer's. And from experience that generally people are going to end up in a position where they require some sort of custodial care for 24/7 or supervision. So adult children, friends, neighbors, it's a great financial burden. Somebody's pulled out of the workplace, your life turns upside down. So we understand that, and people understand that too. But the new approach is going to be healthy brain across the lifespan. There are many, many rare and terrible disorders that occur in the pediatric environment. One of them is Batten's disease. There happens to be a Batten's family in Lakeway that I'm aware of, and a Batten's family that lives in Pemberton, real close to the University of Boston. It's a devastating disease, and it's similar to Alzheimer's, but it occurs when there's a special genetic match between the mother and the father, and survival is generally to the age of 10 or 12, but rarely past that. Little girl in Pemberton is in Austin in a special classroom. She is 14. So there are as many stories to tell about early health, brain health initiatives as there are to tell about late life. The difference is for these children, and I'm going to say thank God, the situations are very rare. Like this Batten's disease, I think there's less than 3,000 children in the entire United States. So I started this circle by telling you about the $150,000 funding for the young researchers that are just 10 or 12 years post-terminal degree. They've got to go out and raise money. So what diseases are they going to focus on and raise money for? Where they can touch the most people, where there's a commercialization aspect available. Obviously, it doesn't matter what it is, adaptive driving, housing, medication. The world wants to help all of us who are over 65. They want to sell us something. They want to give us something. They want us to sign up for something. Why? Well, they want to help us. But there's 78 million of us. Okay. There's 28 million, 25 million in front of us and 28 million behind us. So this is a giant cohort of people. Well, when you have a disease like Batten's, and Dr. Huda Zogby at Baylor College of Medicine, Maxwell award recipient. She has made life-changing discoveries about Batten's disease. She's an PhD neurologist. She runs a big Alzheimer's lab, but she also runs a general neurological research lab at Baylor. The Arnold family just gave her $40 million about 2 years ago. She's now focusing on what they call orphan childhood diseases. And when I say orphan, it means nobody wants to adopt them. Nobody wants to, do you want to spend you've just worked 10 or 12 years and mortgage the house and your wife's working 2 jobs so that you can get your MD and your PhD? Do you want to spend your life researching a disease that might affect 800 children in the United States? Who's going to give you all the money? Is your university going to plow all these resources into you? What are the chances? So it's a financial game as well as a research game. And then additionally, it's like when you knock the dominoes down and they've made the Jenga kind of puzzle and everything falls. Sometimes you start out in Down syndrome and you end up making headway on Alzheimer's disease. Sometimes you start out with Batten's disease and you end up with ALS. And so that's why this sprint, this Texas Healthy Brain Initiative, which I'm talking to you about a bill that's not even introduced yet, but I've seen it and it is supposed to be this Friday. That's why it's so important that a place as big as Texas, and then I said, well, why should Texas do this? Well, I just watch TV like the rest of us have with the president overseas, and they've been taking the map of Texas and then superimposing the Western European countries. We're bigger than everything. Poland, any Western European country just fits right beside us. And when we talked to Governor Dewhurst, whatever year this was, 05, 07, about just getting us a couple $1 million to get our legs so we can get going. And the volunteers, you have to be hungry for the Capitol experience. You have to be willing to take no for an answer. You have to kind of like the environment down there at the Capitol. You have to be able to write letters and make phone calls and say, this is important. But Dewhurst said, we can do this. If not now, when? If not Texas, where? So that's why we do it. Because we can, Edmund Hillary, why did he climb the mountain? Because he could. So we have money now. Texas is just, as you know from reading, rolling in dough. I mean, what's the overage right now? It's in the billions, 26 billion, 30 billion. So we're talking, we want 3. We're willing to take it out of general revenue, which is a real roll of the dice. Because if you take it out, secret is dedicated bond money. That takes a constitutional amendment in Texas to float bonds. And that's like running for statewide office. And the legislature is not amenable to that. I get it. I was, a volunteer. I worked appointed to a position on the university, and bonds are for bricks and mortar, and they're not for replacing the plumbing and painting the living room. So I understand the nature of bonds, and I understand the financial aversion to bonds for something like research. Because as I said, Ivy grows slow. I mean, you don't know, you may put 100 million into something and it's a dry hole. I mean, that's the nature of the business. So we have an opportunity now with this wild fattened checkbook that the state of Texas has to jump in. $3 billion to start with, which I can't even fathom the number of hundreds of millions that we're talking about, but to try to make the magic happen and use the money to lure the brightest and the best researchers from around the world. If we had, at Southwestern, they've got Dr. Mark Diamond, the governor, and all the people, big time operators in Dallas, brought him in from Washington University in St. Louis. It cost somewhere about 28 million to bring him and his entire lab down here from you, about 20 people, and they gave him 3 floors of a new building, the Clements building in Dallas. Huda Zogby at College of Medicine, brilliant woman. We have pockets of these people around. We don't have any medical schools in Texas where I could say, oh, there's at least 5 Mark Diamonds at that school. So if this happens, we get the bill introduced on Friday, if we get, it seems that we're gonna have a very favorable, pathway in the House, and it's a completely different matter. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, I may get all y'all's phone numbers or emails and let you take a look at this website and then turn you loose with emailing your senator and saying this is really important. Good for the head, is good for the rest of the body. And without brain power, you don't have any kind of power. And that's what we want to do in Texas, and that's the start of the story of going from a volunteer raising money or putting on a walk or, you know, doing something to bring in $50 or $100 to just, what did Coach Roll say? Luck is the street corner where preparation is opportunity. And that's where we are. We just, none of us are Mensa members or giant thinkers. We just kind of put one foot in front of the other, do the best we can today. Learn in college about effective communication. A knowledgeable sender, an open-minded receiver. The information is exchanged and it results in the desired response. So we have just always packaged people who have something to say, with people who are willing to listen, and we've presented something reasonable that we think will help a lot of people. Probably not me, maybe not you, maybe your adult children, maybe your grandchildren. Who knows? You know, we don't know, but we do know that without money, it's not going to happen in this environment. So we've got some time, 20 minutes. Any questions? Any question, I'll be happy to answer.
I'm gonna look around with the microphone, but why don't you answer this? Is there anything exciting that's happened through the research that you want to share with us? Is there anything like, oh my gosh, this is amazing that they did the research and we learned this?
Well, the part that's most interesting to me, which is, you know, this is kind of in the weeds, and I'm not a scientist, so, you know, but my husband says, sometimes wrong, but no doubt. I'm Irish. Mark Diamond, who is a Berkeley guy who went to WashU in St. Louis and now has this whole lab of people up in Dallas. He discovered what is called, they call the Big Bang of Alzheimer's disease. And for years, we all thought that Alzheimer's was bad luck. It's really not as inherited as people think it is. It's like, oh, my mom had Alzheimer's and so did my dad, so I'm having it. You know, they don't know when Alzheimer's disease begins. There's people that think it's a type 3 diabetes. They think it begins in your 40s. You're asymptomatic until your 70s. And by that time, you're not even of any benefit as a research subject or a clinical trial because it's too far advanced. So in the world of Alzheimer's, it always appeared that since it manifests asymptomatic until average age 74. So if your average age is 74 and your cohort has this much Alzheimer's, if your mother has it, your father has it, you might have this much Alzheimer's propensity for the disease. You don't have this much. Okay? So there is a factor, but it is not this massive, overwhelming predisposition to the disease. So Dr. Diamond, and I would think this must be a pet ball, you know, bouncing around your brain, the tau and the proteins, and if you're lucky, you avoid it, and if you're unlucky, Dr. Diamond, who has been doing some work on what's called the Diane Project, which you might have heard about in Colombia. There's a large extended family. It's the dominant inherited Alzheimer's network. And there's a family of people in Colombia where 75% of people get Alzheimer's. So this family, once they were discovered, has made themselves generally available to world researchers all over the world who travel and collect samples and see people and diagnose people. But what Dr. Diamond learned from his trip and work that he's been doing with the Diane Project is that there is an unfolding process. There is a very logical process to Alzheimer's disease. I'll tell you how it starts, but he can tell you that it doesn't just bounce radically around in your brain. There is a step. Yes, sir.
I'm kind of intrigued by something I read recently that they do a lot of autopsies on brain. And they find people who had very normal brain functions are pretty full of plaque.
Right.
Is that true? And what's going on? Does anybody know?
It's very true. I wish they knew what was going on, but I can lecture at UT Dallas and the physician, and y'all just check me on this book title, but close. I think his book is called Aging with Grace. Quote, the Nun Study. And this physician is at UC in Chicago, incredible academic environment up there, and a large concentration of Roman Catholics, clergy, convents, seminaries, etc. That longitudinal studies are extremely expensive. And that's why there's not a lot in the Alzheimer's world, because you got to follow somebody for 25 years. Well, that costs a lot of money for a school to run a longitudinal study. But if you're not doing longitudinal studying Alzheimer's, you're wasting your time. Start with somebody at 50, well, they're going to be asymptomatic for 75. So this man convinced two convents that were served as the retirement center for their order to convince them to participate in his study on the advancement of Alzheimer's disease. And I'm pretty sure it's called Aging with Grace. And they had a partner, and they journaled, and they had certain things they had to journal every day. And I went to a Catholic girls' school for 12 years, so you know how organized they are and how detailed they are and how moderate they are, and 1 foot in front of the other. So there's a perfect environment for a longitudinal study. So I journaled on Cindy, and she journaled on me. We have to agree to a full brain autopsy upon death. And so I die, and Cindy's journal says, Debbie didn't know she was a foot or horseback. She's been out to lunch for 5 years. They do my autopsy. This was Alzheimer's. Cindy dies, and I have written previously, Cindy is the picture of health. She's been my inspiration my whole life. She's been a great partner. They autopsy, full autopsy on her brain. Well, she should have forgotten what day it was, about 10 years from her. So this doctor from Chicago is like, what is going on here? So that's I guess the interest among people for the behavioral and environmental impact on the advancement of Alzheimer's disease. So that's why I've heard for years, don't stop doing what your grandmother told you to do. Really eat healthy, exercise, live moderately, highly socialized. And when I say highly socialized, I mean like the things that Cindy's talking about that your group is doing here. Read and extend yourself academically and intellectually. If you do, great doctor at North Texas used to say, if you do Sudoku or whatever that is for the brain, if you do it a lot, all it proves is that you can't believe it's Sudoku, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing anything for the brain. So there has to be alternatives and options, and socialization is a big part. So I think probably reading the book, or at least take a quick look at it. I'm pretty sure it's on audible.com. You want to listen to it as well. It's just very interesting about how these nuns modeled each other. So
I have a question about research. So if we wanted to participate in some research studies, how would we go about doing that safely?
well, generally the Alzheimer's Texas website tries to stay current with clinical trials and research efforts that are going on. You want something that's drivable, drive time for you, because most of the Alzheimer's research initiatives, other than this athlete one that's going on out of Coach Rawls Fund, requires physical history and participation, and so you're going to have to drive to the site, blood draws, labs, those kinds of things. And so NIH.gov has a big, and then Alzheimer's Association has something called Trial Match on their website. And you can go to Trial Match and see if there's something going on around here. And the other important thing is that there's tons of doctors, neurologists, even your local neurologist, might be here in Lakeway, who, for one reason or another, is participating in a drug trial or a study through a pharmaceutical company. So when you go to your annual physical, and they give you the mini mental, the MMSE, or, you know, whatever they're giving you for your brain, you ask the doctor if he or she is participating in any clinical trials or any research trials that you are profiled for. And, you know, when I say profile, I mean, they are very specific, like a white Anglo-Saxon postmenopausal woman who is within 10% of her target weight, you know, that has some college education. Education is protected, by the way. There's certain things that are protected, like we don't know what cures Alzheimer's, but there's certain things that are protected of Alzheimer's. Socialization and education are two of them. So,
I don't know what that means.
well, it means that they don't know why people with high levels of education appear to have a lower incidence and prevalence of Alzheimer's disease, but they know they do. You know, Hispanic individuals, morbidly obese, African-American and Hispanic individuals that have diabetes, much more likely to have Alzheimer's than Anglo or Native American, et cetera. So they don't necessarily know why those are happening, but they know they're happening. And that's the good news about kind of triggering the next discovery. You know, yeah, okay, so they figured out now, Dr. Diamond knows how it unfolds in the brain, and they know that these people are more inclined to the incidence and prevalence factor in that cohort by weight and ethnic origin. And so there's all kinds of focus. A massive NIH funded research project out of the North Texas. I guess it's not a medical school, it's a college of, or is our, yes, North Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine, Dr. Sid O'Brien. I think he just picked up, I heard at this conference for TARP, some huge number, like $150 million. He is studying exclusively Hispanics, and they're using blood biomarkers. You know, just with few drops of your blood, they can tell all sorts of things about you. One of the biggest biomarker analytical companies in the world is right here in Austin on Duval Street. It's called Rules-Based Medicine. And, you know, kind of the tragedy of all this stuff, that medical doctors, MD, PhD, and a businessman, but always in startup pharma, small pharma, boutique pharma, bioscience, MBA, venture capital guy. He came in and helped inform the business, rules-based medicine, get it going. And years ago, Oprah came down here and did one drop of her blood and did a show on how everything they can know about you from a drop of your blood. So RBN became very famous. And then as it turned out, the young man who had the business degree that helped him farm the company, he and his wife raised Batten's children. So their daughter is the little girl across the line. So, yes, sir.
Interesting what you said about lifelong brain health. Might that also spur more big pharma interest in researching drugs instead of, well, you're in your 70s or 80s, we're not going to make much money, so we're not going to research and put money into it.
Well, I mean, it's a sad story, but it's true. You know, I mean, the problem is that the research cycle has been so underfunded for the neurological disorders. I mean, honestly, probably because it happens, it's most visible in the aging community. You know, I always used to say to people, when you're trying to raise money for Alzheimer's or any neurological disorder that affects people that are older, it's there's no emotional equity there. There's no cachet for the life not lived. You know, the young mother with breast cancer who won't see her little girl in her first dance recital, the father who won't walk his daughter down the aisle at the wedding. You know, there is no emotional equity if somebody is 80 years old, you know. So that's generally how you raise money, either through intellectual interest or emotional equity. And so the people, when the disease presents at age 74 generally, and it, you know, Alzheimer's, I tell people, is not It's not forgetting where you put your car keys.
Okay.
Doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter if you put them in a freezer. The Alzheimer's is when you put them up, you don't know what they are or what they're for. Okay. That's the difference. It's like, where are my car keys? Well, I know what they're for. And, you know, my husband just always helps me kind of trace my steps back to where, you know, when I was in high school, I'd say, where's that white blouse with my initials on it? My mother would say, when did you wear it, Debbie? I said, well, I wore it on Tuesday. She said, okay, this is Sunday, so Sunday, Saturday, Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday. Why don't you count 5 things down, that stack of clothes, you know? So that's retracing your steps. That's not Alzheimer's, but I think that pharma, they have been. It's hundreds of millions of dollars is the investment by pharma to bring a drug to the market. A lot of time, a lot of legal exposure. And by the time somebody knows I have Alzheimer's, the drug is probably going to be ineffective. And on top of that, the last time it was approved, we have no drugs, by the way, that impact the disease. Everything that you've read about or your doctors either have you on or have your friend on, Namenda, Aricept, you know, those drugs impact symptoms. They do not impact the disease itself. And the last time a drug was approved for symptoms, John Ashcroft was Attorney General of the United States, and George W. Bush was president. We've had many, you probably read about many clinical trials fail. They fail in phase 2 usually, and rarely to 3. So, and then I don't know the whole story about that mess that the drug outfit, the FDA, you know, they approved that drug a couple months ago, and the whole neurological advisory committee quit. They were so outraged, and the drug cost was $55,000 a year. And they were trying to get it approved on the Medicare formulary of the formulary of approved drugs. And so I haven't read anything about it lately. And I think the company Biogenics, it's a Biogenics drug, and they're trying to retool it back again for a different approach. So, you know, I think that's part of the problem now we've got with COVID is that, you know, people are very mistrusting. They don't, you know, kind of like, well, yeah, it's only money, you know, but it is there's a financial incentive, and I guess it just hasn't been there, and it hasn't been big enough. We can't live with big pharma, and we can't live without them. Yeah, it's just a sad deal.
I don't know if you can answer this question.
All right, I'll try.
What is the date that they think will have a cure?
Oh, they don't. They want to talk about that.
They won't even, like, nobody has a date,
No.
like, by.
No, there's an interesting group of researchers. I'd say this group is pretty much in their late 40s and 50s. They're all at UT Southwestern at O'Donnell Brain Institute. I think we're probably closer on a vaccine than we are on a cure.
Oh,
I think there's a lot of vaccine action. And I think that's just because the nature of the disease presents. Like you probably get it when you're 45 or 50 and nobody knows you have it until you're 75.
right.
And so I think by focusing on the blood biomarkers and longitudinal studies that they have performed on people, they have begun to identify patterns and practices. And I think that's where maybe a vaccine comes. So I do think we're closer on a vaccine. The 2 of the brightest people in the world that I've ever met that have anything to do with so have scrapped everything but their vaccine work right now. Yes, ma'am.
I'm interested in, is Texas a high percentage of people with Alzheimer's? I see more and more memory places opening up.
No, I think we're pretty well across the board.
Okay.
The question,
There are places where there are fewer people. There's some place in Japan. Dr. Rochelle Duty, who was at Baylor College of Medicine for many, many years. She's from Montreal, but then went to Rice undergraduate at Baylor College of Medicine under one in her class, distinguished alumna, and ran the Alzheimer's clinic at Baylor, which is one of the largest in the state. She always had an inventory of about 6,000 active patients, and a very large but very quiet family foundation in Austin funded her work forever. And she was just lured away by Roche Pharmaceuticals in Basel, Switzerland. That's the other thing that happens, is that these bright young researchers, it was one of the reasons Dr. Peterson said to us, fund these bright young researchers that are just worn out from having to raise money. They graduate with a second degree, they probably owe somebody, the government, $200,000 or $300,000 for everything they had to borrow to get this education. They've got kids, they've got a mortgage, you know, they're like a kill at the university, you know, the big fancy professors just wanting to talk to them. They're young, they're novices, you know. So, if somebody's really bright and really young, and they're starting to make sparks wherever they go with what they're doing, their papers that are being written and published and presented, then, big pharma hires them, venture capitalists hire them, equity investors hire them to come in because there's so much money to be made that they hire them out of the lab. And so that was when Dr. Peterson said to us, you know, you start funding these young people, men, women, give them 150, 160, 175,000. And when we did it, we do it at the fundraiser we had down at ACL. We bring them on stage and put their big picture up on the giant AC screen, and you know, they've got Willie and the Doobie Brothers and everybody's clapping for them, and paid to bring their family down because the Dr. Peterson, who's well into his 70s, said the biggest deficit that he sees us facing in the world of Alzheimer's neurological research is that the really bright young people are leaving the lab. And they're following the money. Can't blame them. And they're big brains, you know, I love to be around them. They talk just like we all do. And then when it's just them, they find another gear in a language that, you know, we don't know. I've enjoyed visiting with you. I'll send out a link to these websites that I talked about. And I'll keep you up to date. I'll let you know if the bill gets filed on Friday. And if we can ever do anything for you, that phone number I gave you, 2410420, the answer service collects calls for you. So thank you so much for
Thank you
your
so
time.
much.